Hey guys, it's Machine Dana. Welcome to another Civilization 6 video. By now, hopefully you've been playing the New Frontier Pass. It's been out for exactly 2 weeks. We've had a lot of playtime in it already. I think the devs are looking for some good feedback. Me personally, I've pretty much only played Simon Bolivar or Lady Six, the Mayor. Mayor in particular, I've got some pretty strong feedback over. I've probably played maybe 100 or so hours of Civ in the last last 2 weeks since the New Frontier Pass was out, and it's given me enough time to be able to really feedback in detail what I think is needed for Mayor in particular, a little bit to Simon Bolivar, but I'll save that for a different video. Mayor, on the face of it, seems like a really good Civ, but I'll show in this video why I think actually in reality it's not as good a Civ as it really should be and could be, and actually it's quite a tough Civ to work with. Of the maybe 11 or 12 games that I've played as Mayor, I've only won a single one. The ratios are very different for Simon Bolivar, so just as a secret hint there, Simon Bolivar probably needs to be slightly nerfed, and in this video I strongly believe that that Mayor needs to be buffed. So look, if you like the content of this video and you want to help me out, please feel free to thumbs up the video and subscribe if you want more content like this. Without further ado, why Mayor needs to have a major buff. Okay, so I'm going to be doing this via the means of PowerPoint, and the only reason is because I'm able to move the tiles around, and you'll see why in a minute or two. A quick reminder of Mayor's abilities, and these are quite key to this video really. So obviously with any Civ they get the different bonuses, and how effective or not effective those bonuses are will dictate how good or bad a Civ is. In my opinion, Mayor I thought was going to be a very good Civ, and I now feel that it's really not that good a Civ after having played with that Civ for a while. So I've done a separate video which I'll link in the description about the layouts, the most efficient layout for Mayor. So I won't go into too much detail about that, but basically within 6 tiles of your capital city, your cities will get a plus 10% bonus to all yields. Conversely, outside of that 6 tile territory, it will get a minus 15 penalty, minus 15% penalty to all yields. So a 25% swing from start to finish. That's a pretty significant swing if you're talking about every single yield within a city, particularly when you pull in all the different bonus and compounded interest that you can get from all the other percentage bonuses within the game. So that's quite an important principle in this video, but I don't go into too much detail about the layouts in this video. That'll be in a separate video. So fresh water, you don't get fresh water with Mayor as standard. So when you go on the settler view lens, you will not see any green or red tiles. Well, the red tiles are where you can't settle a city, so you will see red, but you won't see the green tiles. It's all grey, okay? So it's like a barren, yeah, there is no fresh water for Mayor. The observatory is quite an important one. There's a pretty high chance if you're Mayor that you're going to be going for science. So I'm mainly going to be coming from the angle of a science victory with this Civ. If you're not going for a science victory with Mayor, I could probably question why. Really, the Civ doesn't lend itself to a cultural victory. It certainly doesn't lend itself to a religious victory. In my opinion, it's strong for either a domination victory or a science victory, but certainly a science victory in particular if you do things right with Mayor. Although even with that, it's quite difficult for reasons that I'll mention later. So the observatory, you get +2 science for adjacent plantations. So having the RNG with plantations is really important, particularly if those plantations are stacked next to each other, and you can stick an observatory to get a +4 or even a +6 if you've got 3 next to each other. But you also get a +1 science bonus for every 2 adjacent farm or district tiles. So why is that important? Well, a +1 for every 2 tiles means that each farm is a minor adjacency bonus, which is a 0.5 bonus. In Civ you get minor, standard and major bonuses for adjacency. Minor is 0.5, standard is 1 adjacency bonus, and a major, like a geothermal fissile with every other Civ but not Mayor, is a +2 adjacency bonus. These are quite important things, and we'll talk about that. So this is This is the hex tiles and your capital city. Very briefly, and again I won't go into any real detail in this, it's in another video. The most efficient layout for Mayor is this. layout. So you've got your capital city, you've got the closest 6 cities you can have there on the inner tiles, and then also the outer tiles there. All of those cities are within 6 tiles of the capital city, count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which means all those cities will get the 10% bonus. I think we all know probably the reality is in most games you are not going to be able to lay out your cities like this, but we'll get into a bit more detail about that later in the video. That means the maximum workable area in theory that you have for those cities is that for the capital, that for each of the inner cities, and that for the outer cities. Okay, so with that in mind, you got 24 tiles for the capital to work, 16 tiles for the next ring of cities, 20 tiles each city for the outer ring. So for a total of maximum possible 13 cities that could get that bonus, otherwise they lose the 25%. That's what you're working with. So at this point I'm actually going to come out of the presentation and into viewer mode, because I've now got the tiles listed on the side here, because I'm actually going to place them on here and show exactly why I think Maya it needs a bit of a buff. Okay, so in the 10 or so, probably 11-12 games that I've played as Maya, I've found first and foremost it's a really difficult civ to sort of wrap your head around. I find myself thinking 10 times more complexly, if that's a word, for Maya than with any other civ. With the other civs, a lot of the times the layouts are quite intuitive. With Maya, it's very taxing on your brain to think about exactly, because you make one small mistake with Maya and it could literally cost you the game. And with most other civs, you simply don't get that. So placing 1 or 2 cities with Maya incorrectly can totally mess up your whole game. It can make a big difference to the science output and certainly to the production output, those 2 things being the most important elements of a science victory. So with this in mind, I'll just explain what I've got here. I've got all these little tiles. Now I've already placed the cities, so they're already down there, and we're assuming at this point that we can get the most efficient layout. So we'll get rid of those. They're already placed down. This is the maximum tileable areas there. So we know what our sort of canvas area is to work with in terms of tiles that we could work. If you're going for a science victory or even a domination victory, if it's a domination victory, you're going to want some good units, and therefore you need science anyway. And also with the observatory building in half the time, because it's the specialist district for the mayor, there's a pretty high chance you're going to be building an observatory in most cities. But throughout all of this, I'm going to be really pragmatic in the way that I approach the feedback. So I'm going to make some very sort of tight assumptions, which then would actually give probably the absolute best case scenario. And still, it looks like Maya needs a buff. And the reality is, and later on in the video I'll go into, the reality of when you're playing, you're almost never going to get the perfect scenarios. So just bear that in mind when I'm talking about these. So here I'm saying that there'll be, and by the way, you may, if you don't want to see me placing down these tiles, you might want to skip sort of a few minutes into the video, because I'm now going to explain sort of all these tiles, where they would go there, and then eventually what that would look like. But you may want to see my rationale for why and where I place these tiles as well. So the essential for a science or domination victory, but certainly a science victory, you're going to need probably with Maya at least 5 or 6 observatories. And I've said sort of desirably, you're probably going to put one in every single city. So I've got desirable here, another 6, but 7 here, which means the capital and at least the outer ring, or perhaps a combination of outer and inner ring cities would have science districts. You're going to need good production for a science victory. You simply do. And with a science victory, you at least need to have 2 or 3 high production cities. And there are some other YouTubers out there, Potato McWhiskey, The Gaming Mechanic, have done some brilliant videos about how you can get very high yielding industrial zones. I recommend you go and take a look at those, and I will link those videos in the description. So you're going to have a couple of at least 3 or 4 industrial zones in your cities, in your civilization. At this point, I'm not going to consider cities that are settled outside of this area, because there's very rare an instance with Maya that you're really going to want to be settling cities outside, because frankly that 25% swing makes it, unless you're absolutely desperate for the space, it makes it really unlikely that you're going to want to or need to, or it'd be worthwhile to settle cities outside of those. And the same kind of goes for war as well, because you get penalised with the science and the well, you do get penalised with the science because you simply do not get adjacency bonus for mountains or geothermal fissures with Mayor. You don't get those adjacencies. So let's be really clear. You take over a city and it's got a +6 campus because it's got 2 geothermal fissures and 2 mountains. The moment you take over that city, that campus will convert to an observatory and it will no longer get that +6 yield because it's the plantations that are important. So it's a lot less likely with Mayor that you're going to want to be dominating other civs unless they're kind of within the 6-tile radius. I'm not saying that's not something that you would want to do at all, but it's probably not something that you're likely to do. So with that in mind, I'm just going to focus on these in particular. Because you need high production, there's a high chance that in most games, you're going to want to be building a dam. Dams provide a major adjacency bonus, +2 to your industrial zones, and also the same goes for aqueducts. So for production only, you're more than likely going to be building aqueducts. They're also quite a cheap thing to build relatively early on in the game. So for those reasons, I've put some desirable aqueducts over here, and the reason why I've put a second desirable dam over here, the reason for that is because you almost certainly won't get 2 dams in this tightly compacted space, but you sometimes may. So it's not really more of a desirable thing, it's more of a likelihood thing. Question really. You're going to need for a science victory at least 1 rocket port. But in reality, and I found out the hard way on this, there's a funny video of me getting very late game on a deity game with a science civ, and like 10 turns from the end, I flooded my only rocket port, and it was very, very funny, but it was very heartbreaking. You want to be having a backup plan, at least 1, maybe 2 others. So it's not essential, but it is a desirable thing to have a couple of spaceports. You cannot neglect your civics in a science victory. You can't completely neglect that. You don't need to really go for culture, but you need some extra culture because some of the cards later on down the line do massively help you with your science victory. So they're the essential ones. Here are the desirable or likely things that you're going to want to do. If you're going for a domination war, you might want a little bit of extra protection for some encampments. I don't know why the PNG for aerodromes is purple, because in the game it's actually red, but you may build 1 or 2 aerodromes throughout the course of the game just to protect yourself late game. Civs are more likely to get more aggressive later on in the game when they're desperate for their domination victory, if they're going for that, or if they see that you're getting your science victory, they might start to want to attack you to stop you from getting the victory. You may also build science in all the other districts if you've got the space to do so, and the same for the industrial zones. Resource-wise, obviously you're going to come across these resources. Now, it's always RNG in the game, what you do and don't get, and the amount depends on the settings that you've applied to your map, but it's pretty normal to get 1 to 3 horses, 1 to 3 iron, 1 to 3 niter. Chance will be a fine thing. Maybe late game you'll get some uranium, some oil, and if you're getting 1 or 2 coal in this tightly compact area, you're probably pretty fortunate. It's not guaranteed to get coal, but you're unlikely to get 3 or 4 coals. Now, what I've also done here, I've just got some plantations. So the chocolate here, everyone loves chocolate. That represents a plantation, and I'll show that on the map. And I wanted to do salt because I'm really salty about the fact that that Mayor do need this buff, because I played a lot of time with Mayor and I feel like they could be a lot better than they actually are, and I was expecting them to be better. So, but the real reason for having the salt is that represents a non-plantation luxury resource, so something that you mine or whatever, so, or like a camp where you get furs or something like that. You may get some wonders throughout your game, and here's the likely wonders that you may get for a science victory. Great Library, Oxford University, Ruhr Valley, you might have a Petra City potentially. Mausoleum of Halicarnassus is also a very strong coastal city wonder, although I'm not allowing for coastal with these. I'm going to put it there anyway because it may come in useful later. Finally, we mentioned the minor adjacency bonus for farms. That's what these tiles are for, and I'm now going to place all of these. So without further ado here, what I'm going to be doing is almost placing them randomly. It sort of doesn't really matter where I place these as long as it's relatively logical. The point that I'm trying to illustrate here is the amount of space that you get to work with the most likely tiles that you're going to be using within a game, and then I'll go into some kind of drawbacks in the next slide after. So again, now at this point you may just want to fast forward a couple of minutes until I finish this. So I'm just laying out all the science districts in a random order, sort of one per city or whatever. These are pretty straightforward. It doesn't really matter where these go for now. You're almost certainly going to have production in some of your earlier cities, so let's just do that. Whoop, didn't want that. Okay, so they're kind of the essential science and industrial zones placed. You're probably going to be placing an aqueduct. Aqueducts have to go next to the cities, and they're more than likely going to be going next to your industrial zones. So we'll place these out a little bit. Let's just place that one there. And then maybe you might have a dam somewhere as well. Let's say there's a river somewhere near there. There's a pretty high chance in most games you're going to be making a government plaza. So let's stick that there or something like that. Okay, and let's say your spaceport. You're almost certainly going to be building a spaceport in your capital city. So in my view, that is the absolute essential tiles that you're going to be placing for a science victory. Depending on the difficulty that you're playing, we all know that that's not going to be enough districts to get you the victory, especially if you're playing deity or immortal settings. I play deity all the time. That's just not going to be enough districts. Throughout the course of a game, 200 to 300 turns maybe, you're going to get the opportunity to build a lot more districts, and the reality is you're going to want to build a lot more districts, and that's why I've got these desirable likelies over here. So I'm now also going to place all of these. I'll try and do them in the cities where they don't already have the things. So the aqueducts are the easiest to do because it's pretty clear where someone hasn't got an aqueduct. That's the aqueducts, and let's say you get another dam somewhere. Let's say over here, maybe. I'm going to build my rocket ports in my second and third cities, so they're likely to be the ones in the inner ring. So let's say this bad boy over here, and my contingency, I happen to settle a good city over here, let's say. So that's got good production. I'm going to stick a spare port in there. It's rare that I go through a game where you don't create a single commercial hub. And that's because late game, you may end up getting into war, you may need to be able to afford an army and upkeep an army, or you may just want to buy things to accelerate the onset of the victory. And also, as I've mentioned earlier, culture can become quite important in the game as well to get to certain cards that you may need. So let's just put a couple of those in there as well. Desirable science districts in every single, so the observatory in every single district. It's already got one. This guy hasn't. I'm not really thinking about where I'm placing these, so you're welcome to comment about where I should have placed them, but I really don't care. Okay, one here as well. One left. Who's not got a science district? I think it's this guy, isn't it? I think everyone's now got a science district-ish. Let's say you build an aerodrome somewhere over here because you've got a civ down here. You just want a bit of extra protection, and another one here. It's likely that you may build some neighbourhoods just to extend the growth of some of your cities in the mid-game. So I'll stick a couple of them down as well, trying not to put too many in the capital. Industrial zones as well. Again, you're almost certainly going to be doing those in most of your cities if you're going for a science victory. Who's not got one? You don't have one, and I'm going to place it there. That'll be a decent one because I've got an aqueduct there and an aqueduct there and another adjacency there. Okay. Hasn't got an industrial zone. I think it's you. Okay. And then let's say you also place a couple of encampments down. Again, just a little bit of extra protection. Maybe you've got like Gandhi right next to you or something like that. Very aggressive Civ. I couldn't even say that without just giving a straight face. Okay, now, depending on the settings that you've gone for on the map, you can go for legendary starts, you can go for normal starts, or I can't remember what it's called when it's not one of those two, but basically a rubbish start. In terms of resources and things like that. Now, you almost certainly will be getting a combination of these, and that's a reasonable amount of resources. I'm not going to explain why, but those resources that I've given there, having played thousands of hours of Civilization, are about right within the sort of space here. In fact, that's probably a bit of an over-exaggeration in some cases, a slight over-exaggeration. But let's place some horses down somewhere, random places. Your capital city might get one or two. Iron. Bit more iron. And horses. Some niter. Place some of that down. Maybe in the capital again. And what I'm just going to do is send these guys to the back so that you can actually see them a little bit better. Send backward. Just select all of these. That's a little bit better. Late game, maybe you'll get some uranium. Maybe you'll get some oil. And mid-game, you might get some coal. The assumption is that you probably will be discovering most or all of these technologies. I'm not actually sure you can get a science victory without getting most things. Possibly oil, maybe not. But other than oil, I think you pretty much need to get every one of those resources. So you'll at least unlock the ability to do that if you get a science victory to see those things. Now plantations. Now I'm just gonna assume that some of these, as seen in the examples of the games that I've played, you do tend to get twos next to each other, or maybe if you're really lucky, you get threes next to each other. Oh, don't want to move the words. So I'll put them next to the Science District just for the sake of example. And that one there. Done it again. This one here. Right, you move. Okay, so that's the plantation set. What I will say is, for Mayor, I think the way that the game AI works is that you actually get an increase in the number of spawns for plantations because they're so integral to Mayor. And for that reason, you generally also tend to get a lot more flatland as well. Again, it depends on the map types and some of the settings, but you generally tend to get some favourable conditions. This one here is not sent backwards. Oi, send to back. And now you send to back. There you go. So I mean, I've put 6 plantations down. For Mayor, there's a pretty high chance there'll be more than 6. There's a pretty good chance there'll be 7, 8 or 9 plantations in that sort of quite wide scale area. It's quite common that you'll get 4 or 5 in fairly close proximity and then a few others dotted around within this area. So that's that there. Now, it's extremely rare that you get resources, but all those resources, but none of them are like non-plantation resources. So you're going to get some let's say mineable resources, yeah, and they'll spawn randomly. Okay, and then again, you may want to put some wonders down. Let's say Great Library. You get that in your, I don't know, your second or third city. You may go for Oxford University in your capital city. Ruhr Valley, you're almost certainly going to be going for that in your capital city. Maybe you get a Petra City somewhere. And maybe you get a Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. Assuming that all these tiles, the white tiles, because I'm saying that we can build on all of these tiles, physical rather than water stuff. So the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus would have to be on the coast. So that's all of the sort of likely / desirable and essential tiles placed down. Now the other thing is, if you're playing Maya correctly, particularly if you're on Immortal or Deity, you're going to have to place down tile improvements to grow the cities to get the housing for Maya. And they also provide, as we've said, the adjacency bonuses to the farms. So I'm just going to place some of these down. I mean, I'm saying that we'll make 12 farms. For Maya, only 12 farms would not be a good approach. Only 12 farms for Mayo means that you're probably not making enough farms if you've got this many cities, 13 cities. So I'll just do the adjacency around the campuses. I'll only do 4 there because the 5th one won't give me the extra bonus. Remember, it's even numbers. You've got to place 2 of these down to get the bonus, the adjacency bonus. Okay. 2 more. We'll get an extra +1 in this science district here. So that's all the tiles placed down. And with that, you see, you know, quite a clustered, compacted area. And you're probably at this point thinking, well, you've managed to place everything needed down here to get a science victory. What's the whole point of the video? What's the whole point of the feedback? Why does Maya need a buff? Well, you got to understand here, I've given the perfect scenario, the near perfect scenario. Certainly perfect in terms of city layout. You cannot lay out the cities better than that for Maya. You simply can't do it. It's not possible. So city layout is perfect, and I've assumed that you've got all of the resources, which is a perfect scenario. You may not get all of those resources. You more than likely won't quite get all of them, but in quantity you will get probably about that many resources. But here I'm also saying that you're not building as many farms as you probably should be doing. So in reality we can put a lot more farms down here, and that would look even more clustered than it is. And yeah, basically there's some really big assumptions that we do need to now talk about. That in itself already looks extremely difficult, and the chances of you being able to sort of lay out your cities like that is highly, highly, highly unlikely in virtually every game that you play. But let's just assume at this point that you can. At this point, I'm going to go into some actual assumptions. So my assumptions that I've had so far here are that no Civ forward settles in bad spots. So normally for Civ forward settles, they're not going to settle in the exact place that you would have wanted a city. So your choices are, you either take that city and raise it, or you don't take the city at all and you don't go to war with them, in which case you simply lose the space, or you take the city and you just bear with it where it is in its place. But the problem with that is you then don't get the most efficient layout. So let's just, I've assumed at the moment there's no bad forward settling that's taken place and that you've not gone to war. No city-states are taking up that space as well. There's no water at all that I've accounted for in that map, lakes or coastal, because remember you don't get any kind of adjacency for corals or turtles or anything like that. There are no mountains in that. There are no impassable natural wonders which you can't build on, and they obviously take up space. For every other Civ that you get, having natural wonders within your borders is generally a good thing. With Maya, it's a bad thing. It's completely unintuitive. Like I groan every single time I get a natural wonder with Maya, because it's like, oh man, now it's less space for me to work with. Very few or zero luxury resources that are not plantation based. As I said, I've only put 3 salts down. The reality is that's going to be higher than 3, to be honest, in that amount of space. And no entertainment complexes are needed. Yeah, you more than likely may build a couple of entertainment complexes to prop up the amenities. And then I'm also saying that no sea-based wonders or harbours are within the picture as well. So when you take that into account, let's just for a second copy all of this stuff onto the screen. Right, so I've now got this. Just delete the duplicates of that and that. Send this to the back. PowerPoint's so good. There you go. I think there was a duplicate of that as well, was there? No. Okay. Fine. So now, taking into account those assumptions that I made, and they're quite gross assumptions, really. It's virtually impossible to have a game where all this could actually be made. So let's not disrupt any of those things in there just yet. But what I've now got is terrain tiles. So these are all sort of individual lake tiles and some ocean tiles. I've now got individual mountain tiles and clusters of mountains there as well, and also some city-states. I'm just assuming these are going to be purple city-states, cultural city-states, but any city-states will do. RNG will hit you where it hurts, I'm sure. And then also other civilizations. The maximum distance is likely to be 3 tiles that they would expand into. In the long term, it can go to 5, but that's very, very late game, by which point you've probably grabbed the tiles anyway. And also natural wonders. It's highly unlikely you're going to be placing... Wouldn't it be good if you could place natural wonders? It's highly unlikely that you're going to be finding more than 1 natural wonder in that space that I've shown there. You maybe might find 2. So I'm just going to be pragmatic and use only 1 natural wonder here. So let's just assume for now that we've got potentially some... Right, actually, first thing we need to talk about is the maximal workable tiles. So with the layout that I showed earlier, the capital gets 24 tiles that it can work. The next ring of inner cities, those 6 get 16 each. And the outer ring gets 20. So, just to do a quick calculation, 16 times, so these are the inner cities, times 6 cities, 96 tiles for the inner, plus 120 for the outer cities, so 20 each, plus the 26 for the capital city. 240 maximum workable tiles that you're going to be able to work with in absolutely perfect conditions, right? So our maximum canvas size is 240. That obviously excludes the tile of the city itself, because you can't work that tile, or rather it's automatically worked. You have to work it. So bearing that 240 in mind, I'm now going to start doing something that's a little bit more realistic, which is to say, okay, let's just assume that we couldn't place this city, this one here, and therefore all these districts, we take them away. That one as well. Yeah, those districts could belong within that, but that one there wouldn't exist. Neither would the aqueduct. Neither would that. So you've got a couple of spare tiles that can be used by the city here. But we're going to assume that that's all lake tile here. This is just representational of lake tile there. I can copy paste that actually, and just representational of lake. Okay. And let's also now say that there's some mountains on the map, and then maybe all of a sudden this city here cannot be placed. So it's pretty normal to get mountains on a map. So say that happens. You get mountains there, a cluster of mountains, and maybe a few sort of smaller mountains that cluster off like this. Again, these are fairly normal scenarios that happen. Might come off here, might interject into some of this area here. Mountains tend to come as lines of mountains. You don't tend to get too many sporadic mountains on their own in most map types. Just add a few more mountains in here. These are reasonable amounts of mountains that I know would be on the game. You do get sometimes the odd single mountain on its own. We'll do that. So already we're down to potentially two cities down, just because mountains and coastal. And I think I'm being quite generous there to say that only 1 city is down from coastal. It's pretty common that you might get 2 or 3 cities that are kind of near the coast, and therefore you can't put them cities down in their most ideal location. But let's just say 1 for now. I said I would be pragmatic in this video. Where can we put this mountain? Yeah, next to that one there. So they are... That's now what our sort of civilization looks like. And this is completely reasonable scenarios. These aren't unreasonable scenarios, okay? Now let's also say that the city we talked about down here, we weren't able to place on this tile here next to the aqueduct. We weren't able to place that city in time. So all of these tiles... Oh, we just deleted a mountain. We'll give the mountain back. So all those tiles become unusable, and instead we've got a city a city that's been placed there by the other civ. As we know, cities, other civs do cluster more than one city, so it's entirely feasible that they may have placed another city, let's say, here. So we automatically lose these tiles here, which I won't delete them just at this point. So we've got another civ here already, and again, another civ forward settling us happens all the time. Coastal tiles happens all the time, depends on your map type, of course. Mountains happens all the time. Completely reasonable scenarios that happen in game. So now, just because of those, and I feel like I've been pretty generous, we've lost one city to the lakes, we've lost one city to the mountains, and maybe one city to the civ forward settling. Now we could take over this city. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's on the 7th tile, so we lose 25% yields on that. And if that happens to have a science district that was next to these two mountains, let's just duplicate this here. If that city happens to have a science district that's there, you're going to get a +2 bonus there, adjacency bonus. You immediately lose that +2 bonus and then 15% extra. And you also don't gain the 10%. So that city might have started out like quite a good city and looked quite attractive to take over. The reality is when you take over that city, it's a lot worse for the victory type that you're going for. You're going for science, remember, here, or possibly for domination, but unlikely. So that's what we're left with. So you may take over that. That might actually become one of your cities, but it's not going to yield you that much. And honestly, it's unlikely to be worthwhile going to war for that city because it's not within the 6 tiles. Now you could raise that city. And put it here instead, okay? So we raise the city, we put it there, we then lose this. We've not got the science. What little science you would have had residually in that science district, it might have had a library or something like that. So you've now got that within 6 tiles and you're getting the yields, but the thing is, you've had to build a settler to do that. You're having to start a city from scratch just to put that in its place. So it's extremely difficult to mid-late game, and it's unlikely you're going to be going to war within the first 20, 30, 40 turns. It's pretty likely that you're going to war within 50 to 150 turns within the game, okay? Perhaps a little earlier if it's deity and immortal. So this city is massively disadvantaged to all these other cities that you've got because it's starting on turn 50, all right, let's say 100 or 150. So if I just undo that, and we'll put it back there. Let's just assume it stays as the other Civ city for the time being. Now, you may not, with the city states, you may not lose the ability to place this city. That's 3 tiles away. But you may lose tiles because of it. And this is assuming nobody gives any envoys to it, because whenever you give an envoy to a city state, it increases its borders. So you may lose some more tiles through placement of cities near city states. So these are all within range. I can legitimately build a city there and still be able to build it so close to the city state. Same for that one. It's 1, 2, 3, the 4th tile away. But you're losing tiles. You're losing tiles. Okay. Okay. Now let's just place a few lakes in here. You may get lakes. Pretty common to get a few lakes in that sort of sized area. It would be common to get somewhere between 5 and 20 lake tiles. But let's just assume we get maybe 5 to 10. Lake tiles. Place these out. Now, that's a lake tile next to the ocean, which is impossible. But anyway, we'll leave it. We'll ignore that. And now let's just assume also that you maybe might lose 1 or 2 tiles to. That would be a really bad. Yeah, I'm gonna place it there. That's a meme drop, really. That is me getting Mount Roraima, which has got amazing science yields, and then the bloody. Oh no, because you don't get adjacency, do you, with Maya? So okay, that wouldn't matter. In a normal game, the iron appearing adjacent to 3 tiles would be bad, but actually it doesn't matter. Ignore that. So let's say you lose another couple to a natural wonder, whatever wonder that might be. And again, I'm being quite pragmatic there. Sometimes you see 2 natural wonders within a space of area this size. So all of a sudden, what we had earlier, which was the perfect scenario, 13 cities and quite a lot of spare tiles to build other stuff, other wonders, other farms, other districts. All of a sudden, the picture looks very, very different when you factor in reality of gameplay with Maya. So even though in reality, in theory, Maya seems like a very good science civ, okay? With a science victory, you have to be able to make high production cities. And to make high production cities, you need the extra space to build good layouts for your industrial zones. And that means placing aqueducts down, that means placing dams down and having adjacency bonuses and not having that space interrupted for at least 1 or 2 cities. Those 1 or 2 cities have to do the space projects and they take a long time to do. The base production for those is very high. So you have to have at least 1 or 2 high production cities to be viable, and that's before you factor in deity mode where you're going to be getting pummeled by other civs who will want to kill you. So you really want to be having 3 or 4 or 5 decent production cities to even just to be able to defend yourself in a deity or immortal game. So I feel like I've been fairly pragmatic with this. You're in a situation where there's so little space to work with to get the maximum yields, or even close to the maximum yields for Maya, that you're left in a situation where you can't make high production cities. So you're trading off, I want the science, I want the farms, I want the housing for the farms with, right, well, I'm either just not going to make other districts that I would normally make, or I'm not going to be able to defend myself, or I'm not going to be able to make high production cities to make the space projects work. So it's not good enough just to think about, I want high science. You've got to have a little bit more on the civics and the culture to get victories, and you've also got to have high production cities, at least a couple of them. With Maya, it's almost impossible to get those 13 cities placed. The reality is you're lucky if you can get 10 cities placed, maybe 9 or 10 within there. Any cities outside of that range, 10 tiles or more away from it, you're not going to get high yields from them. Because they'll be late game cities, so you're not having those cities early on, and therefore you're not getting the benefit of those cities throughout the whole game. But B, you're also getting a 25% swing on the yields, and you're also not getting adjacency bonuses for mountains. So you're having to rely on trying to settle cities near plantations as quickly as possible if you are going to settle them outside of that 6 tile space. Honestly, if you get past turn 150 and you've not placed all of your cities for Mayor, there's virtually no point in placing any new cities or taking over any new cities with them. It's crazy. Totally crazy. So these are the reasons why I think Mayor needs to be buffed. So now we talk about what we can do to buff Mayor. Well, in my view, to buff Mayor, it's pretty simple. There are 2 things you could do to buff Mayor. You could either increase the percentage of the benefit that you get for those cities that are close to Mayor. I'm not sure that's the solution, really. You might get a little bit more of a buff to production. Let's say they have a 12 or a 15% production, all yields across the board increase. So the benefit goes from 10% to 15%. Well, in a way, that's also almost exasperates the problem with the swing. Now becomes a 30% swing rather than a 25% swing for the cities that are outside the 6 tile radius. So that does exacerbate one problem, but it may improve the production. So that is a solution. What should the percentage be? Should it be 2%, 5%, 10% more? I don't know what the answer is. Well, that is an easy way of buffing Mayor. That is one of the 2 things I think they could do. But I think the best solution here, honestly, is for the devs to think about expanding the number of tiles that get that bonus, that 10% bonus. So they could keep it as a 10% bonus. It makes a bit more sense, but increase the number of tiles that they can actually have cities. So how would that work? Well, let's say if they had it within an 8 tile radius, you've got a little bit more space to work with. Not every single decision that you make becomes a killer decision for Mayor, a critical killer decision, unlike it is for most of the civs in the game. And all of a sudden it becomes a bit more of a viable civilization, and also you then a bit more incentivized to take over other civs and go to war with those other civs to take a city that might be within 7 or 8 tiles, because you then get the production bonuses or the science bonuses for that rather than a 25% swing. So this is all, it's a long-winded way of me saying Maya needs to be buffed. But honestly, having played them for 11, 12 games over the last 2 weeks, quite a lot of experience now with this Civ. I do believe that is quite an easy balancing act that they could do with this Civ. And yeah, hopefully you guys will share your own experiences with Maya in the comments below. If you have found this useful, or if you agree with me, thumbs up the video. If you disagree with me, still thumbs up the video, but tell me why you disagree with me. Maybe you've had better experiences than I have. Maybe I've been very, very unlucky. We are due another update from the New Frontier Pass literally today or tomorrow, because it's been 2 weeks. So maybe in that balancing update, they will do some balancing to Maya. So I'm going to get this video up today, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully the devs do see this, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot. Take care.